Done. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be a great SDP Connect. So we're really, really happy to have you. Want to introduce everybody to a new member of DVU staff who many of you will get to meet over time. Kira Ciriola is our new program and policy assistant. She is currently being trained by the one and only Ed Herzl, who has a sort of cultish following among SDP Connect participants. And so you'll be seeing Ed sort of providing instructions to Kira at certain points, but we want to let Ed take vacation sometime and not have to always run these meetings. So Kira will be doing that, as well as you'll be seeing her at various activities that DVU has. So welcome, Kira. We're so happy to have you. So see, she's already getting love. That is great. Okay, so Kira wants some of that love at some point too, folks. So we'll get her to that point. So welcome, everybody. Today we have a great topic. And that is of interest to a lot of people, which is how do you move from year 1 to year 2 or from year 2 to year 3? I personally am interested in this because my son is moving to year 3 on June 1st, and inspired by the meeting today, I sent an email. Probably it's already late. I sent an email to our service coordinator to ask for a meeting as soon as possible to work on the certified budget. So you're going to hear from our guest speaker that you need to get ready earlier than you could ever possibly imagine, which has a whole bunch of downsides involved in that as well. So right now I'd like to introduce Talene Kachadorian, who is from Guidelight Group, which is an independent facilitation firm. And she has actually given this before. Sometimes we recycle what we do and update it because there's always new people who are getting involved and there's always new information that we have to include. So it was so great that we invited her back. And I see Howard McBroom here in the list, and he is one of, I'm not going to say it's her favorite client because that would be mean to all the other clients, but he is probably one of her favorite clients. Who's going into his, Talene? What year are you going into, Howard? 3rd year as well. And so, perhaps we can ask him to make some comments at some point as well, Talene, if you'd like. So take it away, Talene, and you should be able to share your screen and whatever you need to do.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I am sharing my screen and I'm hoping you can see it full screen and not be distracted by any of the pop-ups that are coming up.
Yeah, we do see it. We see kind of all the tools around it, but we can definitely see it.
I apologize. I don't know how to get rid of all that. So I'm going to work through that if you don't mind.
No worries.
No worries. Okay. So I did give this presentation actually with a team of people last year at DVU. We also gave an updated version of it after that. And this version you're seeing today has been updated literally minutes before this meeting has come on, with input from quite a few people. So I'm very thankful for everyone who stepped up to send me some of their thoughts so that I can include it in here. A lot of them were things I was already thinking, but it was definitely helpful to get that second and third opinion and make sure that we're getting the voice of everybody involved in this presentation. So there's information here from the perspective of the client, perspective of independent facilitators, perspective of regional centers and FMSs. So there's a little bit of everything. So hopefully, and I cannot guarantee that I have everybody, I don't know if I have everybody accounted for, but I think I've got quite a bit in here. And again, this is a work in process. Best practices as of today with the information we have today, okay? So transition process, really, we broke it down into 6 steps. Reviewing your monthly spending report from your FMS and the current spending plan should be the first thing that you do. Second would begin your process for the upcoming year for your transition. Third is to update your person-centered plan. And we'll talk about each one of these in detail. Fourth is holding your IPP team meeting. Fifth, agree to and certify your new budget. And then sixth is writing your spending plan. And I've got some tips and some recommendations as we go through as well. So the biggest difference between year one and year two is the timeline. When you're working in year one, you are going through the steps that you've learned in orientation. Pick your independent facilitator, choose your FMS, get your expenditure report, write your budget, get your budget certified, write your spending plan, and then move into self-determination. When you're going from year one to year two, your timeline is much more critical. So you actually have a drop dead deadline. In year one, if for some reason there's a delay, all you're doing is delaying yourself an extra month or two in order to enter self-determination. But when you're going from year one to year two or three or four, your annual transition date is a hard date. There is no changing. If you don't have your paperwork done in time, if all the documentation and your POS is not in the hands of your FMS, you will not have money on day one. And if you have staff, that means your staff will not be paid on that day. So it is critical that you look at this timeline in a reverse order. So look at your transition date as your finite date that cannot move. Then move backwards and say, okay, what does the regional center accounting department need from me? How much time do they need to get the information to the FMS? So we're estimating you need this information to them about a month before. Talk to your service coordinator, see if there's any, make sure that they have reviewed everything, that they confirm your spending plan is up to par with HCBS compliance. So that means that you must submit your spending plan to your regional center approximately a month, and in some regional centers cases, even 6 to 8 weeks before. Don't shoot the messenger, please, because I'm just telling you what we're seeing. The 2 months before, we want the regional centers, they're telling us that they want to provide we want to make sure that they're providing you with your certified budget. Any budget negotiations need to happen. Your IPP team needs to meet prior to that. And so as you can see, 3 months before, you need to be completing your newer updated person-centered plan. You need to be reviewing your spending report and beginning planning for your upcoming year. This, as much as it sounds unrealistic, is the only way that this is going to happen and get you into your next year without losing any of your services. And this is even a tight timeline. So let's go into breaking it down. Step one, review your monthly spending plan and your current spending plan. What does this mean? So about 3 months prior to your transition date, you should be reviewing your current year's expenses and checking to see if you have enough money in your budget to finish the year. Hopefully you've done your due diligence all year long, monitored your spending each month, made sure that you have everything set up and ready to go so that you can be ready for that. So you're going to review your monthly spending report that you're receiving from your FMS, compare it to your current spending plan. Discuss with your independent facilitator if you have one, and I highly recommend you have one. Are there any areas where you have spent more than expected? Are there areas where you have unused funds? Do you need to move any money around? If you do, what needs to happen and how quickly does that have to get to your regional center? How much time do they need to make those changes to your spending plan and to your FMS so that you can continue to have enough funding? So then you must submit the revised spending plan for the remainder of the year and confirm that the FMS has received that revised spending plan so that you have enough time to make any purchases of services during that time, okay? Also, as part of step one, we gave a few suggestions, which is make sure that the FMS is involved in the process so they know that there's a change coming to your spending plan. They should expect the new authorization or the POS from the regional center. Keep the FMS Regional Center independent facilitator, if you have one, on a group email until the FMS confirms that they have all the information that they need to process anything. That way, if you have any potential purchases or outstanding items or services that need to be covered, they know that that money is going to get transferred and that you're transferring the money correctly. It would be a good idea to make sure that before you submit the changes to your regional center, you have your FMS confirm that the money that you think is in each category is actually there, so that you're not moving money out of a category that potentially has an invoice that will show up later on. Step 2, begin planning your upcoming year. Especially if you have new vendors, will you be changing any of them? So start talking about that. Are you going to keep the same FMS? Are you changing? If you're switching, get your account set up well in advance. Some of the FMSs are giving us dates of start no earlier, even with transition. They don't care if you're a new client into self-determination or transitioning into a new year. Either way, they want to make sure that you get your account set up well in advance. I know some of them are now taking new clients for August and even September, I've heard. Are they taking new clients in the month that you're transitioning? That is critical to understand. And are you keeping the same FMS model or are you changing? Those are all important discussions because it will impact every one of your decisions. Are you keeping your same IF or are you going to someone new? You might have multiple IFs for various reasons. Maybe one is good for the transitions while others help you on a day-to-day basis. Are you considering using someone else for the upcoming year? Are you planning on interviewing them? Hopefully by this point, you've already done that. Service providers, does this require a specific notice period to end any of your current services? Does a new provider need to be onboarded with your FMS? Are you choosing to hire your own staff for the upcoming year? Please make sure if you're hiring your own staff for the upcoming year, and this is a lesson hard learned this year for me, is that DDS is taking an extremely long time to process the DOJ paperwork and get the results back to your FMSs. And if there's any glitch in hiring, then and that individual needs to go through an exemption process, that exemption process, I'm hearing from some of the IFs, is taking upwards of 6 to 9 months. So please don't assume that your staff will automatically transition with you if you decide to hire your own staff. I just wanted to check in real quick. Lorna, Helen, am I going too fast or am I okay? Okay, I will slow down. And also, do you guys want to take questions as we go, or shall I go through to the end and allow for questions at the end?
Yeah, let's allow for questions at the end, Talene. But
Okay.
what I actually wanted to make sure, and I should have said this at the beginning, and I apologize. Everyone needs to pick a language, including English speakers. So please go down to the bottom of your screen, go to interpretations and choose either English, Spanish, or Korean. In addition, we will be taking questions at the end of Talene's presentation. You can put your questions in the chat, and Ed and Kira are going to be keeping track of all of those questions and ask Talene or myself or Molly or Tim these questions. The questions can be about this presentation or about anything else related to the self-determination program. You can put it in the chat, or you will have a chance to raise your hand at the end of the presentation. Thank you, and go right ahead, Talene.
Thank you. All right, so continuing on with step 2, which is beginning your planning. Part of planning for year 2, I have found, has to do with assessments, authorizations, prescriptions. So when you're, and if you notice the timeline 6 to 8 weeks out, if there are any new or ongoing needs that you find out through your person-centered planning process, the regional center may ask for an assessment or a progress report with new recommendations to determine if the service may be authorized in the traditional system. So if it is something from the traditional system that has come into your budget and you're asking for that to continue, they need to have documentation as to why and how. If that's the case, okay, if it's a new need and that requires any kind of clinical approval, you might want to consider a couple of things. One is either just increasing the current year budget to pay for the assessment ahead of the transition, or if the money is available, let's remember that we are all still at the end of the day stewards of the state's money. If the money is available in your budget, please consider repurposing your funds to get the assessment done in advance of the next year. It will work to your benefit because then you can ask for the service itself going forward. Prescription/recommendations, if there's anything that you need from your doctors or any other professionals, make sure you have those in order. Do you need a letter of denial from your insurance or any other entity? Is there a need for a written prescription or any recommendation from a provider that would justify ongoing services? Those are all important things to discuss, at least at that 6 to 8 week before transition. You may not, and I'll be very realistic here, the clinical approval may not come in time for your transition. If that's the case, don't panic. You could go into your next year with the information you have, with the idea that once that clinical approval comes in, you could increase your budget at that time as well, okay? So about 3 months out prior to transition, confirm your timeline for your transition with your regional center. This is probably one of the most important steps. So ask them, what do they need from you and when? Who would be responsible for your transition? Is it still your service coordinator? Do they have a new department? Is there a new SDP coordinator? Just get an idea of what that looks like. When does the accounting department need the final reviewed spending plan so that they have enough time to process that authorization? When will the regional center provide the certified budget to you? So the timeline I gave you guys at the beginning. When should the IPP team hold their meeting? So all of those things are important. So you also want to confirm the same timeline with your FMS. Some of the FMSs need additional time depending on what type of account you have with them. Also depending on how complicated your spending plan is or what types of companies or individuals you've hired. So they need that additional time. Again, communication is key in this process. It is with year one to year two, from coming into year one, even more so going into your following years. So the next step we have, sorry about that, is updating your person-centered plan. So now you've gotten the basics done and you've gotten the logistics done. So now is the fun part. I love the person-centered planning period. This is my favorite. So first of all, you want to discuss whether you need a basic review and update to the prior year, or if you need an entire new person-centered plan. Typically, for most of us, a basic review and update would make sense. However, if you have a major change in your circumstances in terms of where you're living, you've gotten married, you've graduated from college, you've gotten this great job. So if you have major changes, you definitely want to consider a new person-centered plan altogether. If a basic review or update is what you want, just take the most recent person-centered plan, update the report, but this time you want to include your outcomes from the previous year, any progress. You want to be able to showcase those things because that's the beauty of self-determination. We didn't come into this just to shuffle paperwork and move money around. We came into this to make a difference in people's lives. So we want to make sure that that is highlighted. And this is the time and the place to do it. So you want to update the goals and the action plan for the upcoming year. Now, if you're writing a whole new person-centered plan, you do want to begin planning at least 3 months before the transition, if not 4, because it does take time to set a date and get your circle of support to attend. So in order to give them all time for planning purposes, you could start a little bit earlier. Set that time and date with them. Then in the written report, again, make sure that you're including outcomes from the prior year, the progress from the current year's goals, and develop very clear goals and an action plan for the upcoming year. It might be that some of them are the same goals, and that's okay too, but you do want to be clear on the things that you've accomplished and what you want next to happen. In step 4, we have hold an individualized program planning team meeting. I know it's a mouthful. The IPP team should meet to discuss your needs for the upcoming year. So that you could invite service providers if that's appropriate. You definitely want to have your own support system there. You want to review the progress and the outcomes over the past year with the regional center. Have the progress reports ready if that's appropriate, and you do have them. And I do know many cases when that would be very handy. Review the new and upcoming person-centered plan with the regional center. And in this case, make sure you send them a copy in advance so that they could read through it. It makes the discussion much easier so that you can discuss any new, unmet, or ongoing needs that will affect your budget. At that point, you want to make sure that all of your goals from the person-centered plan are mentioned in the IPP. Those that are relevant to the regional center should be identified as goals on the IPP, but even the ones that are not funded by a budget item should be mentioned as well, because the IPP should be representing you. I have heard things from some regional centers. Some of the IFs have told the stories of the regional centers keeping the old IPP and just adding a page to the front of it that says that the individual's gone into self-determination. I don't want to make a decision because legally I don't know what they're supposed to do or not do, but I will tell you the IPP is the legal contract. And so if it's not on the IPP, you shouldn't be receiving services against it. So you do want to make sure that the IPP is reflective of the items on your person-centered plan. If you want to add anything to your spending plan, it better be on that IPP. Okay. Step 5, agree to and certify your new budget. So about 4 to 6 weeks before, and I know this sounds odd because you probably at 4 to 6 weeks are only looking at 10 months, 9 to 10 months worth of data from your monthly spending report from your FMS. But it really needs to be done that far in advance for the accounting department. So agree to your new budget 4 to 6 months out. Get a copy of your signed certified budget from the regional center. Make sure that it's countersigned by the individual and the regional center. You will sign that budget, and then once they sign it, make sure that you get a copy of that as well. And then you sit down to write your new spending plan. Now you're about 4 to 6 weeks out. You want to draft your spending plan with help from your IF, of course, and input from your FMS. You want to review that new spending plan with your FMS and with your regional center. Make sure that everybody agrees on what service codes are being used. The responsibility for the service codes lies in the hands of the regional center. However, it's very useful for you to have your IF and your FMS also involved in that process so that there's no question later why certain decisions were made. Submit your final spending plan, which should be signed by you and the regional center. Make sure that you send a copy to the FMS so they know what's coming as well. And then confirm that the FMS has received a copy of that signed document as well as the POS. The FMSs are asking me to tell everybody that just because the FMS has received the POS, right, the purchase of services from the regional center, that does not mean that they can act on it. So please check with them to see if they need anything else, because there is something called an e-billing system. And if the information hasn't been entered into the e-billing system, or if multiple systems are not matching, then the FMS is at a standstill until the regional center gets that organized. So a couple of recommendations that we've come up with: start 3 to 4 months in advance. I used to say 2 to 3, that's been updated. Keep everyone in the loop, regional center, independent facilitators, FMSs, circle of support. Put the agreed upon timeline in an email upfront to the regional center, FMS, and IF. And if that means the reverse, that you want the timeline from your regional center, then ask them to give it to you. in writing, but just so that everybody's on the same page and there aren't any questions as you get closer. And then check with the regional center and your FMS on any new timelines they may have because of some of the ongoing changes to the directives. So just in case you want to double check with them. In addition, you want to make sure that your final invoices for your current year are turned in so that your budget year as it's ending is accurate. Make sure the invoices from your vendors are clearly identified for the period of which they cover. You don't want a year one expenditure to be paid from your year two. It throws off all the numbers completely. Typically, your vendors will be doing it correctly, but it's always good at this time of year to just confirm that. Be persistent on following up with the regional centers and the FMSs. Don't take things as they are because no news is not good news in this case. You really want to make sure you're hearing back. If your representative from your FMS is not calling you back in a timely fashion, or your service coordinator is not, or your regional center in general, I shouldn't pick on just the service coordinators because they're just messengers in many cases. But if your regional center or your FMS is not responding timely, I would take that as a red flag that something is off, and I would follow up with them to find out so that you can get that taken care of as well. The two pieces of terminology that seem to be confusing for many people are payer of last resort and generic resource. So just wanted to review that here and leave it at that. So payer of last resort means that the regional center has the final responsibility. They have the responsibility to make sure that all generic resources have been considered before funding any goods or services. What does that mean? That means that when they tell you, did you check with this entity or that entity? That is their responsibility. They're not doing it in order to prevent from funding something. The law states that the regional center must confirm that all potential generic resources have been exhausted before they pay for something. What are generic resources? Goodwill is not a generic resource. Abilities First is not a generic resource. A convalescent, a nonprofit that is giving beds away for low-income individuals is not a generic resource. A generic resource is generic resources are resources that are offered by public agencies that are legally required to provide services to individuals with developmental disabilities. So keep that in mind. They're public agencies that are legally required to provide those services. So if it's not a public entity, then it may not be a generic resource. The last piece is question and answer. Wanted to give you guys a chance to ask some questions as well. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point.
That was so great, Talene, and so succinct. And I actually was taking notes because there's some things I need to make sure, like the piece about making sure that all the invoices are in before the end of the year. That I got to get to some of our service providers. So thank you. Great one. And there's been a bunch of questions in the chat, but I want to remind everybody that you can also ask your question in person by going down to reactions, clicking on raise hand, and we will call on you individually to ask your question and allow you to unmute. So before we go to the first person with the raised hand, Ed, do you want to ask a couple of questions from the chat?
Sure do. So one of the first questions I received was DM'd to me, which is, hey, do you guys know if you're going to have an in-person self-determination program conference this year?
Great question. So you should know that DVU has been going back and forth about what we are 100% having a conference this year. We always have a conference except during 2020 when the world shut down. But we always have a conference, and we have set the date for December. Hold on, I'll get it for you. Hold on a momento. It is December second at this time, Friday, December 2nd. It may, at this point, we're still nervous about COVID, so we might keep it online as we did back in 2021. But if things improve with the pandemic, then we will go in person, and it will probably be 2 days, both that Friday and Saturday. So we're still kind of going back and forth and trying to figure it out, but reserve both of those days, and we will of course let everybody know as soon as we figure out what we're going to do. Okay.
And Judy, don't forget, we're looking for sponsorship.
Yes, and we will be reaching out to folks to help sponsor the event. So thank you for reminding me, Molly.
Thank you, Judy. So our next question is from Chuck. If we write a new person-centered plan for year 2, will the regional center pay the independent facilitator for the service, or do they only do that during the initial intake?
Talene?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, sure.
So as of right now, as of today, there is no additional funds for any independent facilitation or person-centered planning work after the first year that you go into self-determination. So that $2,500 is to assist you to transition into self-determination. Thereafter, any work that needs to be done, including writing a new person-centered plan, needs to be budgeted into your plan for that to be paid for from your self-determination spending plan.
Okay, so let's move to a question. I'm going to ask you. Okay, I don't know. Siobhan Jones. Siobhan, I hope I pronounced your name right.
It's Siobhan. Thank you.
Siobhan. Okay, so I was pronouncing every vowel.
No
Siobhan
worries.
is way easier to say. Wonderful.
No worries. Thanks so much. So I just have a quick question. As a provider of service for self-determination clients, can you just clarify for me what our responsibilities are in terms of working with the regional center to make sure that we are able to track and firm up documentation around service approvals, billing, and payment? I think for me, there's just a little bit of confusion in terms of the regional center's level of involvement with that.
You want to take that one, Judy, or shall I?
Go ahead.
So my personal opinion, as much as I adore most of the people that work at the regional center, it is no longer their responsibility to be involved in that process at all. It is between the individual or their circle of support, or if they're conserved, their conservator, and the vendor, period. It's that simple.
Did you have any follow-up on that, Siobhan? Oh, I'm not sure. You might have muted yourself. So now I will find you to see. Here we go. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I was on mute. I was talking, but on mute. Yeah, that does answer my question. So I did hear earlier in the presentation that you mentioned that ultimately the regional center is the last stop in terms of making sure that service codes are in place for the services that are being received, and determining final billing and payment determinations for those services. So as a provider of service, I'm just trying to make sure that we're understanding after those final determinations are made, you know, what's in place, so that as we're rendering, we have line of sight to that information.
Okay, so let me clarify something. I think I see where you're going with your line of questioning. There are two parts to self-determination when it comes to money. There is the budget itself that is determined by the regional center and the IPP team on what is needed for that individual had they stayed in the traditional model. And that may or may not need reports or information from a vendor in order to secure that funding. However, that stays on the funding side. On the spending plan, which is completely separate, the individual may choose to utilize those funds in a different way for vendors that may or may not provide services in the traditional system. So that series of decisions on what codes are being used is being done on the spending plan side, and self-determination has their own service codes separate from what you've probably seen in the traditional system. So that's why we ask for the regional center to make some of those decisions, because some of them are overlapping services, or it may not be fully clear. We just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. For the service provider, and this is just for your ears because it really doesn't matter for the client, in order for you to bill properly, you should be receiving your information from the FMS. The FMS will know what services you're rendering because you have been assigned a service code based on the services you're providing. So you should be getting that in order for your invoice to be accurate, asking the FMS for the service code, not the regional center.
Okay, thank you so much. That does clarify.
Okay.
Thanks, Siobhan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's go to Sonia Morales. Go ahead, Sonia.
Oh, hi. My son is 22 and he receives ABA through Regional Center, and the ABA company who provides the services is not in self-determination. So when my sons move to self-determination, I will have to find people to work with him through those services. My question is, for the next year, when I need another recommendation to get approval for the following year for ABA, how can I do that?
Sonia, those are two excellent questions and two very different questions, okay? So first of all, what you said is that the ABA company says they don't work in self-determination. Well, let's get them to work in the self-determination program. First of all, service providers do not have to become vendored. It's for many service providers, they really love working in the self-determination program because they have much more freedom to be able to provide services in ways that are outside the box. That's why self-determination exists, is so that it is not written based on a specific program design that the service provider has given to the regional center. So just because they say they don't work in self-determination doesn't mean that they can't in the future if they are someone that you want to continue hiring. Now, as far as once you are in the self-determination program and want to continue receiving behavioral therapy, each regional center is kind of doing it differently, or there's some regional centers doing it one way and some regional centers doing it a different way. Just because you get behavioral therapy approved in the traditional system to be added to your budget doesn't mean you have to use that funding directly for behavioral therapy. There is no line from the individual budget and how those funds are created directly to your spending plan. Now, there are regional centers who will tell you different. They are wrong. I've read the law that created the self-determination program, helped to write the law, and they are incorrect. What you have to do, though, is to be able to have behavioral therapy in your budget to get those dollars. You have to have behavioral goals in your IPP. If you don't have behavioral goals in the IPP, then why should you get behavioral therapy added to your budget? So if you have behavioral goals, you do have to have service providers who are or services or activities that are helping you meet those behavioral goals. So for many people, ABA therapy doesn't work for you. Some people, certainly in the autism community, do not like ABA therapy. They don't believe it allows for individual choice and control over your life. There are others who believe ABA is a very good thing. It doesn't really matter because you don't have to do ABA therapy just because it gets funded in your budget. So let's say you have an individual who has maybe issues of sensory integration concerns, or maybe they have communication concerns, or maybe they have needs for support around coping mechanisms. All those things in the traditional system would be considered behaviors or behavioral therapy. But you can use those funds to address the goals of communication, self-regulation, sensory integration without behavioral therapy. You can use it for swimming, for meditation, for exercise, communication supports. All of those things can meet those behavioral goals, but none of them are being provided by an ABA therapist. Now you should know that not every regional center believes this. Not everyone believes this. They're wrong. They are wrong. And I see my friend Adrian Jimenez from Lanterman asking, how do we measure that the funding for being provided for ABA is being effective? Well, that is where at the annual IPP, you look at the IPP goals and you say, okay, we had a goal in communication. We had a goal on self-regulation, and we had a goal on sensory integration. All of those in the traditional system, ABA therapy would be addressing, but you have other ways you're addressing it in your spending plan. Let's look at whether those goals were met, whether you're still trying to achieve those goals, or whether there are new goals that would be related to behavior in the traditional system. And that is how you figure it out. The problem is ABA therapy is not the end all be all for everyone. The person-centeredness is not one size fits all, right? And so I understand that regional centers need to measure whether ABA therapy is still required by that individual. And you do that through the person-centered planning process. You do that through figuring out what supports people need. And if those supports are still needed for communication, sensory integration, self-regulation, being out in the community safely, being able to make friends, being able to hold on to those relationships, those are all things that behavioral therapists would help with in the traditional system. So I hope that helps, Adrian. And it's something I would love you to spread the word to your colleagues on. Did you want to add anything, Talene?
Well, Adrian just asked, because there's a clinical service that needs to be reviewed by a clinical team. So they have those expectations. So I think that was the other thing I was going to suggest, is that we're running into, when we're in the field and we're actually working with all of this, we're hearing what you're saying. And of course, we all agree with you. But the practicality is that regional center cannot approve the ongoing service into year 2. And I think that was the essence of the question, without a review or an update or progress report. And so who would write that progress report if you haven't kept the ABA team on board?
Right. And so I've been discussing this with regional centers for a couple of years now. And I understand the concerns you have. The problem is that the clinical approach to disability is very different than the self-determination approach to disability. Remember that the IPP, the clinical stuff, is all the medical model of disability, where we need to cure somebody, we need to fix somebody, we need to focus on their deficits and correct them all. What self-determination is about is a person's strengths, a person's interests, and how we build on those strengths and interests and help a person achieve goals to be integrated in the community and live their hopes and dreams, right? And so that is the ultimate disconnect between self-determination and the traditional system. And so this is where regional centers need to maybe not have a clinical team review it, because clinical teams are very ABA focused, very fix the person. How do we change the person? How does that person change to fit into the community as opposed to the community accommodating that individual? And so there needs to be a paradigm shift in this area as well. We talk about self-determination all the time as changing the culture of the way we talk about disability. And this is one very, very important way that regional centers need to change the way they function internally when it comes to self-determination participants. So maybe it is this clinical team or a different group of folks, maybe your community integration folks, your inclusion folks, are looking together with your self-determination staff at, is this person's goals related to the issues that would normally be under behavioral therapy being addressed? If they are addressed, then if this person met these goals and so perhaps they are being able to have those relationships, those interpersonal relationships they want, their coping skills have improved, their safety skills have improved. I have to tell you guys, in the traditional system, that would mean you're going to get fewer services because you are actually improving in your life and you are able to live your life with fewer supports, right? So that would require you to have a lower budget. We should look at that. If you're meeting your goals, we should look at that as success, right? We should look at that as victory. We should not look at that as, damn, we gotta cut, we gotta, our budget's being cut. So I know we've been spending a lot of time on this. This issue has come up repeatedly at our SDP Connects. We're gonna move on, but I hope that helped. And I'm actually willing, just in finality, to say that we maybe need to have a little work group of regional centers, independent facilitators, and participants and family members to sit and work through this issue and come up with some sort of best practice, because DDS is not going to do it. We've already asked them to clarify this and they're not going to clarify it. So, all right, so let's move on. Go ahead, Ed, why don't you mention a couple of questions in the chat. Thanks.
Absolutely. So our next question is from Mary. Does the budget need to be certified before the spending plan can be done? This is one we get frequently.
Okay, so this is a really good question. So yes, theoretically, how can you write a spending plan if you don't know how much money you're going to be given? And how can you rely on a budget that's been verbally told to you or in an email if it hasn't been certified by the accounting department as being accurate? So yes, the certified budget should come first. It should be, everybody should agree on it. Then you go and you write your spending plan. However, that said, it is possible to start writing your spending plan ahead of time so that when that budget comes in, you're just, clarifying a couple of things and getting it done so that the turnaround is quicker, because that timeline is so tight going into year 2 or beyond, right? So that's one thing you could do. Another thing that I've seen one of the regional centers do is ask us for a copy of the spending plan without the final decisions on the quantity, the number of hours, or the amount of money that's being spent, so that they could do their due diligence while the accounting department is dealing with the certified budget. At least the SDP team can look at your spending plan and ask questions if they think that one of the expenditures may not necessarily qualify for being spent. So it is something that I've seen some of the regional centers ask to see in advance. It does make it a little more cumbersome, to be honest with you, but I can see how in some instances it would be helpful for them to see it. I mean, what if the item that you want to spend money on does require clinical review? What if the item doesn't meet, or that company that is offering that service doesn't qualify under HCBS compliance? So it just gives them some time to do their due diligence on those items.
Thanks, Talene. I want to ask Rick. Rick Cohn, are you ready to ask your question? I'm giving you a heads up. while Rick is getting his question typed in, Ed, why don't you ask another question from the chat?
Certainly. So our next question from the chat is from Susan. So if you make changes on the spending plan for the second year, do we need to put it on the notes so everyone knows what changed?
Okay, so that question I think needs to be clarified, so I might answer it in 2 steps. The changes I was talking about at the very beginning is actually changes to the current year. So if that means this is your year 1, then changes to this year's is what I was talking about. Going into year 2, 3, or 4, so anytime you're going into a new year, it isn't considered a change. It is a whole new spending plan. So you're really starting fresh each year with your spending plan. Now, in practicality, you might want to take the old one and update it. That's up to you, but that's not what my question was about. Once a spending plan has been approved and a purchase of service has been issued to the FMS, after that, any revisions that you need to make, those take time to happen. And that's why I wanted to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to make those revisions before the end of the current year so that you can start fresh with a new spending plan in the next year.
So just a little correction, Talene.
Oh, okay.
Regional centers don't approve the spending plan.
Correct. Sorry, the review.
Yep, I know. I sometimes mistakenly say it. Just want to remind everyone that regional centers review spending plans, and they're only allowed to look at 3 things. They're allowed to look to see if generic resources or other funding is available, such as school districts or insurance companies can pay for services like therapy. Number 2, whether the services are able to receive federal matching funds. And there's a long list of services like that, 26 pages of it actually, that if you can find in our book, the Thinking Outside the Box book, or you can find it on DDS's website. And number 3, are these services provided in settings that are integrated into the community or in the home? In the home, okay? That's it. They review it for those 3 things, and then it gets attached to the IPP and sent to the financial management service. So there is no approval process at all. Remember, self-determination is about us and us making decisions, okay? So Rick, are you ready? Go ahead, Rick.
Is it normal for the FMS to take a month and to have to pay a vendor?
Talene.
Okay, so it all depends on the FMS. The answer should be no. That should not be happening. That's the reality. Has it happened? Unfortunately, yes. And it, in my case, was detrimental to my client. So I think what's important is at the beginning of your relationship with your FMS, one of the questions you should be asking is, what should you expect? What does their payment look like? Do they pay the next day? Do they pay once a week on Thursdays? Do they pay every 2 weeks? So you want to make sure that you know so that you and your vendor and your FMS are all on the same page. That way, if they're not paying on time, then you know. They definitely should not be paying any invoice past the due date, because that could be very detrimental.
Yeah. Thank you, Talene. Susan Hadeshi, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for doing all you do. I try to listen and I always get some tips. I've been trying there. I have so many questions, my head's spinning. But I wanted to know, my son just got a job, and I worked through the Department of Rehabilitation, and I asked Harbor Regional Center for a job coach, and they wouldn't provide a job coach, or they said they couldn't find what they're looking. But since I was in the self-determination program, that I could hire my own job coach. But I'm finding it very hard to hire people. I feel like I don't know enough people to hire. Like first personal assistant, I couldn't find anyone, so I had to be it. And it's taken me months I haven't even gotten the welcome packet yet. it's just like I started filling out the paperwork a month ago, and then I signed a contract and all the papers, and now I was supposed to be able to be working a week ago, but I still haven't received the paperwork. So I hope they will backtrack the funding and allow me to get paid for all the carting around I've done for him to different services. But
Wait, can I ask Susan?
There's,
Mhm.
yeah.
When you say they have sent me the paperwork, who is they?
The FMS.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, were you required to do a background check?
Yes.
And did they ever give you a higher date?
Yes, they did give me a date, and it was for like, I think last Monday.
So that's the only day they can backdate anything to.
Okay. Okay. So for a job coach, I mean, if finding people is very hard, and if I find a job coach, do they have to also do a criminal background check, or they do?
Well, it depends. So the only people who are required are direct support professionals. So people who are personal care, who are providing personal care and have really the opportunity to potentially abuse the individual. So if the job coach is going to be alone with that individual, is going to be providing one-on-one care, they are required to get a background check.
I said, no, this would be with the whole group. This would be in a public restaurant with everyone else around.
I still think they probably would be required. There are some job coaches you should know who provide advice to a one-on-one aide. That's what we have with my son, is that we have somebody who's an expert in employment, who is more of a guide, a strategist around this stuff, and doesn't provide the one-on-one assistance. So in that case, they are not required to have a background check. But if they're ever at any point alone with that individual, they need to have like if they drive them, if they help them with any kind of personal care, like in the restroom, they are required to have a criminal background check.
What about a personal trainer?
If they are alone with that individual, yes.
Okay.
But it depends. My son has a trainer who's at a big giant gym, and he is never alone. And if there's any issues related going to the restroom, they will call the one-to-one aide who will take my son to the restroom. So it just depends on what they're doing.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So I don't know how long it's going to take Harbor Regional Center to find him a job coach, and I don't want to wait. And then I'm, it just puts so much pressure on me to find the staff.
Susan, you're already in self-determination, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's no longer their responsibility to find your job coach. It is your responsibility.
But it's from the Department of Rehabilitation, and he's going to get
different.
paid.
That's different. Then DOR is supposed to be looking for the individual.
Well, DOR said that.
Not yet, not the regional center. So once you start working with the Department of Rehabilitation, that's called DOR,
Right.
you're no longer working with the regional center. They're completely different agencies.
Right. But I was told that that they were going to, the Department of Rehabilitation told me that they were going to get Harbor Regional Center to get a job coach, and Harbor Regional Center agreed to it.
Okay, so that means the Department of Rehabilitation has declined to provide services. And now they're handing it back to the regional center. So DOR probably has never even heard of the self-determination program and knows nothing about it. So what that means then is you need to go back to your regional center, say your son has been, it's your son, correct, Susan?
Yes.
Your son has now been denied services from Department of Rehabilitation. So now employment services need to be provided by, or at least funded by, the regional center, and the amount of money they would be funding for a job coach would just be added to your son's budget.
Okay? And then I would have to find a person to be able to spend that money.
Or a company that you want to hire. So a company or an individual, that's your choice.
There are amazing people out there who don't want to be vendored with the regional center and want to work in the self-determination program. So maybe in the future, we'll do a whole thing. Molly, remember this, that we'll do a whole thing on employment and the kinds of amazing service providers out there who can help folks.
Okay, before I go, can you just direct me in any kind of way, like where can I go to find a job coach for him? What's like a couple agencies or?
Yeah, you know what, let's be in touch outside of this, because I don't tend to recommend specific agencies ever in public.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so we can be in touch outside.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
absolutely. Ed, go ahead with the next one.
Certainly. So our next question is from, one second, I have so many tabs open, as always happens with SDP Connect. One second. Our next question is from Tiffany. Can a client still attend an adult day program under the self-determination program?
Yes, they can. You can use vendored services in a regional center or non-vendored services. You can also use a vendored service and negotiate your own rate, and they will be providing the service completely differently than they provided it in the traditional system. We do that. We use a traditional vendor, but for different things, and we negotiated a different rate with them to provide services. So yes, you can use a traditional program. You just have to make sure that they abide by all of those rules that are going to be reviewed by the regional center. So there are some vendored service providers who provide segregated programs, group programs where people with disabilities are not in settings that allow them to be integrated into the community. And so some day programs are not going to be allowed to be used in self-determination if they are segregated. If they are community-based, if they are individualized, you can still use them. All right, Jean or Jeannie Lloyd, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name.
It's Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, good afternoon. We're new to the regional center. My son is new to the regional center. So what they came up with is, they said we switched over to self-determination because we weren't receiving any services from the traditional services. So we just went on and accepted SDP. And what they did was they said, oh, because he hasn't received any services within California, we don't know where to start. So what they did was, with our budget, we had to be creative. So after the budget was set, well, while the budget was, you know, while we were creating the budget and so on and so forth, the budget was going into approval, but we still had questions because we didn't know. So we got the ABA approval because we had another ABA, and then we found out that they didn't accept that ABA because they weren't doing SDP. So we had to go out of the box and find our own ABA. We found one. I found one on the internet. However, they promised us that we would get more community. What is it? Community integration. We were promised that we would get more community integration dollars and respite, so that my son can be cared for. But it never happened. They promised.
Go ahead.
They promised us like 3 months ago.
They promised 3 months ago, and now the hours are running out quickly. And so we'll have to move money from ABA, unfortunately, in order to go ahead and make sure this individual is being paid. So I feel like we're being caught in between a catch-22 here, where they promised and they never contacted us back. We're reaching out to them constantly, reaching out to them. Hey, you know, where is the money? Where's the increase? Our FMS is like, well, you said you were promised this money, but we don't see it. Yeah. So, you know, unfortunately, this person can't get paid beyond 2 months from now because they never approved the increase or never even talking about the increase.
Right. So Jean, this is obviously really serious now if you're having to move money around. Do you mind telling me, you muted yourself, so I'll allow you to unmute again. Can you tell me which regional center?
North Regional.
North LA?
North Austin, North LA, sorry.
Okay, okay, good to know. So what you're going to want to do is there's lots of things that you can do to try to get some advocacy here. The first one is you have at North LA a very, very active local advisory committee. Each regional center has a local advisory committee. I'm pretty sure I saw John Francis come in. Oh, he's gone now. The chair of your committee was on earlier.
Advisory committee.
Yeah. So they have meetings once a month, but
yeah, I did see that. I did see that. I was trying to attend it, but my schedule at work kind of interfered with it.
I totally get that. The second thing is that you can ask to speak to a supervisor for your service coordinator, because obviously your service coordinator has not been given the information to provide back to you. And
also, we don't have a service coordinator. Our service coordinator, they said that they had to hire somebody else. And so we have not had a service coordinator during this whole transition.
Oh, wow. I've heard those stories before. So what I would do then is definitely ask to speak to the head of client services. That's what I would do. The director of client services. Hold on. I'm going to actually, there's Elizabeth Gomez works very closely. Go ahead, unmute Elizabeth, because she works very closely with North LA Regional Center, may have some good ideas. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi, Judy. I was just gonna invite her to attend the cafecito tomorrow at 11 a.m., where majority of the families who are having issues with how they're navigating the regional center, exactly what you just said, no answer, no response, no service coordinator, all of that. And then there's staff there at the cafecito that will take your information and will call you right away. So I'm not promising anything, but I'm just saying that at least you'll get your name heard and somebody will contact you right after that.
Wonderful. So how do I get my number over to you?
No, I was going to say that if you log onto their website, the cafecito is monthly and is open to everyone. Okay.
Can you spell that for me?
I'll write it in the chat. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I also wanted to chime in here. First of all, tonight after this is their board of directors meeting.
Oh, great.
It might be a place to stop in and voice your concerns.
Is it still happening, Talene? I've been hearing that a lot of meetings are getting canceled now at regional centers because they need to be in person now as opposed to online.
I am looking at it and it's still here. It does not say canceled. Everything else I've gotten said canceled. This one doesn't, but you could be right. So that's another place you could go. And then also I saw in the chat, I don't know who it was, who mentioned Claudia as the coach, but I believe she's only the coach for individuals going in on their first. I don't think she can work with anybody once they're in self-determination. Is that correct?
His family is not yet in, so.
Oh, I thought she said she is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, she is. You're right. You're right, because she hasn't got it. I think that Claudia could help in any kind of way. So please go in the chat, Jean, and see her website. Claudia Wenger is one of the, there's actually a whole bunch of coaches. DVU actually works with that particular regional center as well. We don't help individuals. We actually help the committee do their jobs. But there's a lot of really good people at North LA trying their best. And so I think that it would be really helpful for you if there is a board meeting tonight to just show up. They have public comment usually right at the beginning. I'm going to try to find the link and put it in the chat.
Great. That would be awesome. I thank you so much because I'll jump on that call.
Great. Okay, I found it. It is now going in the chat to everyone, because I saw that there's other people from that regional center as well.
And you know, not to, you know, say anything bad about the person who's been helping me with the regional center. It's just, you know, a little frustrating because I know that they're trying to do all the best that they can do, but it's just a little frustrating here when you're being promised something and nothing's getting done.
I understand. You are one of many people saying the same thing, Jean. So, you know, please keep in touch, come to our SDP Connects and let us know how that went. And hopefully you're able to go to the board meeting tonight and to the service cafecito will be happening tomorrow. Let me try to find that as well. Oh, I found the link for the cafecito registration and I'm putting that in the chat as well. That's the second link.
Okay. All right. Wonderful.
That's directly how you can register for it. Okay, let's go to Connie and Harvey Lapin now.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm going to throw another curveball. Okay. Supposedly, I was told by the department there is a rate increase coming to providers, which will affect self-determination. If we don't know exactly how they're going to do it, that will affect the budget and spending plan.
And it's really hard to do your spending plan, not knowing.
You know what's happening. And
we really have to push some people to make a decision so that people can actually do,
because
Colleen, what you say.
It has started at a couple regional centers that I know of already on certain programs.
So let me just explain to everybody what Harvey and Connie have been talking about. So in last year's state budget, so this is the $12 billion budget, billion with a B, budget that funds the developmental disability system. There was an additional several $1 billion provided to service providers in the traditional system to receive rate increases over the next 4 years, up until 2025, 2026. And those rate increases are being implemented, not for every service, but for most services, and they're being implemented slowly. So as of April 1st, 12 days ago, the first 25% of the rate increases went into effect. As of possibly as early as July 1st of this year, the second 25% will go into effect, which means that for some services, they're getting half of their rate increase. All of those rate increases are supposed to go into your individual budget. There has been absolute certainty told by the Department of Developmental Services, the state, that says very specifically it's supposed to. So the problem is that we are at a terrible disadvantage as family members and self-advocates, because we do not have the same information that service providers in the traditional system have, that the regional centers have. So it's very hard for us to say, we know that, for example, by the way, it's public information. The rate increases are public information. They're on DDS's website. Some service codes are getting as high as double the rates. Some service codes are getting a 40 or 50% increase over the next 4 years, which means that if you're getting a quarter of that, you should be at least getting 10% rate increases added to your budget for that service. Remember, it's the service in the traditional system that's making up your budget, not the spending plan. Okay, so we just don't know what that is. I actually sent this email asking for a meeting for my son's 3rd year in the self-determination program and saying I would like to have a new budget that reflects the rate increases as of April 1st. I haven't gotten a response yet, but I'm expecting that. I'm wondering, Talene, in any of your clients, have you seen anyone get a rate increase?
So I do not have anybody with a rate increase because I don't have the most recent people that were transitioning they didn't have that information. The regional centers did not have information on how much they would be getting and how they would be implementing that. And so the decision was made to go ahead and transition into the next year without the rate increase, and that afterwards that adjustment would be made. So also I'd like to take this moment to remind everybody that once you're in self-determination, so in the traditional system, the rate increase is supposed to go directly to the vendor from the regional center. Because of self-determination, the rate increase comes to us in our budgets, and therefore we channel it into the spending plan the way that we see fit. Since we have been the ones to negotiate the rate with our vendors, we may or may not pass that through to them. It all depends on how you have created your relationship with them, what your contract looks like. So if your contract says that you're at a specific rate for the upcoming year, then that's the rate that you would be at. If that rate were to increase, if you were to negotiate that in with your contract, then that increase would be a pass-through. That's what I've done. I want to make sure that it gets to at the end of the day, we want it to get to our caregivers. But I have a case where we've chosen to pay our caregivers more than what they were getting with their other companies. So when we get that rate increase, they're still currently above what they would have gotten with the rate increase and their old pay. So we know that that money, when it comes in, is going to be applied in a different way. So each of those cases is slightly different. We just want to make sure that we're paying our caregivers, people. That's the only thing. We've got to pay them well. Otherwise, we're not going to get the service. The entire reason why we went into this is so that our loved ones would get the benefit.
Right. Thank you, Talene. William Camacho, go ahead.
Hello, let me put the video. Hello.
Hi.
I just had a question because on October 7, there was a letter from the DDS to regional center saying there's a restoration of camping, social rec, and other services. And so anyways, I asked my regional center directors, and they said it was approved through the DDS, but every regional center has to get it ratified on their own. So I just wanted to see how that fit in the self-determination program, whether it can be, is it a budget line item that gets incorporated, or is it something that's separate from the self-determination?
No, it's part of the self-determination program. You would be able to ask for that service in the traditional system. They would come up with an amount, and that amount would be added to your budget. And you can use it for whatever you want. You don't have to use it for social rec if you don't want to. This I would put in the exact same category as those rate increases, that no one's really been able to get any of these services because regional centers keep claiming that they don't have anything approved. Although I guess I have heard one or two regional centers have authorized people in the traditional system. So if they're authorizing anyone to get these services in the traditional system, you should absolutely be able to get that service added to your budget if in fact it meets your IPP goals. Remember, everything has to meet an IPP goal. So let's say you have an IPP goal that relates to exercise and our healthy lifestyle, and therefore you would use a social rec program that would include swimming or include gymnastics or karate or something. The amount, there is going to be a rate that is a set rate, and that amount, let's say it would probably be 1 or 2 hours a week at the most, that amount would be added to the budget. So Talene, do you know of people who've actually made this happen yet?
So yes and no. We're seeing it very sporadic. The one hiccup that I'm finding with social rec for those that are minors is that the burden still remains as parent responsibility for social rec. So if it's something that you would have, if you have more than one kid, or if the child did not have a disability and you were asking for a camp, for example, and as a parent, it's your responsibility to pay for that camp, the regional center is holding tight that they still would not be paying for the camp because you would have had to pay for them yourself if the child didn't have a disability. For the adults, I'm getting pushback where they're saying, well, we've made accommodations and we've made relationships with YMCA, and YMCA is going to be doing that particular type of social rec that you're looking for, and their rate, because they're a nonprofit, they do fundraising, they're giving us a rate of $3 a day. So we can give you $3 a day because that's what that social rec. So I'm hearing it's all over the place, the kind of responses that we're getting.
Thanks, Talene. That's helpful. I'm seeing people in the chat saying that it's starting to happen, that Valley Mountain Regional Center has approved social rec for people to get into their budget. You just have to really make sure that you have goals related to social and recreational programs or needs, I should say, in your IPP.
I will tell you that at Lanterman, we do have a couple of cases where they have been approved as well. And the most important thing is that we've gotten out of the habit of including it in our IPPs because it hasn't been something that was available. So you might have to even discuss amending your IPP to allow for it so that you can get the additional funding.
Thank you, Talene. Tim, are you ready to go? Okay, great.
I want to add something with regard to the background check. Even though you go through the fingerprinting process and they send it to DOJ, the employee have to fill out the enrollment packet correctly from the FMS because they need to fill out their part in the live scan form for DDS. If there is any mistakes on the enrollment application, there is going to be delays at hiring and getting the result back for the background check. Please make sure your future staff is filling out the employment packet correctly because this causes delays in the hiring process and getting their background check back.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. You're right. That is critical information.
Thank you, Tim. Really, really helpful. Ed, go ahead.
Certainly. Hold on one second. I'm just getting.
Well, while you're looking at that, I'm just going to let Howard McBroom speak because we were talking about him before. Go ahead, Howard.
Howard, you're on mute.
Can you unmute, Howard? There you go.
Okay, there we go. Judy, hello. Good to see you again. And first of all, I want to tell you that my prescription medication have been approved. I am no longer, I'm without prescription medication. Thank you, Toreen, and her good work. GT Independent finally settled with them. And my question is, do you still want me to continue working with you on that conservator thing?
I do, Howard. We will be in touch with you in the next couple of days. Thank you so much, Howard. Howard's just entered his third year, or have you entered it yet already? Great. You just entered your third year in the self-determination program. Howard's been part of advocating for self-determination for many, many years, well before the program started. And is one of DVU's big ambassadors. So thank you so much, Howard, for everything.
And I look forward to seeing you on Empower Hour panel discussion next Thursday, a week from tomorrow.
Absolutely, I'll be there. Thank you, Howard.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
Ed, go ahead.
Certainly. So our next question is from, let me scroll back up here, Beth. Is there some kind of assessment or checklist to submit for vendors to the regional center to accept as meeting the HCBS final rule? Yeah,
there is. Great question. It just came out in the last month, that checklist. The provider doesn't have to proactively send it. The regional center has been given that checklist, and they will determine which service providers have to provide that. It's only a few service providers have to do that. These are only service providers who also provide services in the traditional system that are often provided in group settings. So let's say you've hired a vendor who normally provides a group day program. They would have to fill this form out to say, yes, we're providing this service in a different way for this individual that allows them to be integrated into the community. So yes, there is a list, but it's not something that you as a participant or family member or you as a service provider need to worry about unless your regional center asks for it. Okay?
Also, Judy, just to confirm, part of the question was that they had to give that to the FMS. You want to clarify? It doesn't go to the FMS.
Thank you. It does go to the regional center. All right. The FMS will probably likely get a copy of it, but the work needs to be done by the regional center. We are getting close to the end. So Ed, was there a burning question that was listed? Because I know we've had a ton.
There are quite a few. Let me pick one out just exclusively based off of what I see first. Here's one from BJL. I have been asking my regional center about the need for reports and data. I keep getting told I don't need any. I do plan on having some, but we are nearly halfway through our first year and lots of services have been slow to start or staff leave or are moved because of COVID and COVID fallout. And we've been told we don't need reports. Now I'm nervous that we've lost time and we won't have the information needed as we round the corner to planning in a few months. What should I do? And the reason that I've selected this one is I've been private messaged several questions along the same lines.
I think one of the things that I would keep in mind is that we all know that there is a staffing shortage across the board everywhere. The regional centers are aware, everybody is aware. So if you don't have enough data, then you give them the information you do have, and you just remind them that those are hours that were unmet in the same way you would have discussed it before you came to self-determination. I wouldn't worry about it, but I would just track the information you do have and be able to say with 3 months worth of information, this is the result or this is the outcome. Can you imagine what would happen next year when we have all 12 months filled?
Right. That's really important, really important. We only have a minute left. Caroline, you will get the last word. Go ahead and unmute, Caroline.
Okay, the person who was asking requiring North LA County Regional Center, I'm on their board and I know 2 people who are staff on the board. His name is Dr. Jesse Weller. He does the self-determination for them. He could answer her question, and Luchenka's the new executive director. So they could go up to talk to her about their CSC, and she could give them the name of the CSC's manager, because each CSC has managers.
Caroline, that's so helpful. So happy to know. Are you having a board meeting at 6:30, Caroline?
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess. All right, great. So
and they have a new rule. The president have a new rule. You have to email to come in to discuss issues, because we had an outburst at the last meeting with one of the CAC members. So they made a new rule for the board that you have to email them and let them know you want to address your issue for the public input now.
Oh, wow. Good to know. They changed it. Wow. So thank you, everyone. We try to end right on time because we have interpreters who need to leave right at 6 o'clock. We have so many questions. Maybe Ed, just an idea, hold on to all these questions and we will try to address them at our next meeting in 2 weeks. The next meeting may be 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. We will have to see based on some scheduling issues. In the meantime, I apologize to Helen, our amazing Korean interpreter, and Lorna, our amazing Spanish interpreter. I just want to tell everybody that we have a bill in the legislature to reform fair hearings. Please go to our website to get involved. disabilityvoicesunited.org. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.